They called him a useful idiot and didn't know he could hear them. Noah Halden was never supposed to hear that part. The kitchen was glowing with late afternoon light, all white marble, brass fixtures, and the kind of expensive warmth Serena used to call the first real home we've ever had. Vivian Cole was pouring wine. Tessa was leaning against the island, laughing too loudly. And Serena, beautiful, composed, still wearing the ivory blouse she'd worn to the firm that morning, was standing barefoot by the sink, smiling into a future she had already decided would not include her husband. Tuesday, they said, would be easy. The signature transfer would go through. The joint accounts would be moved. The house would be clean. And Noah? He'll sign whatever Serena puts in front of him, Tessa said, swirling her glass. He's basically a useful idiot with good credit. Vivian laughed first. Serena didn't. That was the part that hurt most. She only gave a tired little smile and said, "He's not stupid. He's just safe. There's a difference." Then all three of them laughed, not cruelly, not theatrically, but with the easy comfort of people who had repeated the same truth to themselves often enough that it no longer felt ugly. Outside the terrace doors, Noah stood perfectly still. The evening air pressed cool against his skin. Somewhere below, the city was all glass and noise and motion. Inside, his wife and her family were calmly discussing the mechanics of removing him from the life he had been paying for, protecting, and quietly holding together for years. And for one strange second, Noah didn't feel rage. He felt recognition. Because some betrayals do not begin the moment you discover them. They begin much earlier. In all the smaller moments, your loyalty teaches other people how safely they can underestimate you. By the end of that week, Serena would understand that silence is not always surrender. Vivian and Tessa would learn that patience can look an awful lot like weakness, right up until it stops being generous. And Noah, the man they had dismissed as harmless, predictable, manageable, would finally stop mistaking devotion for partnership. But before I tell you how a quiet software engineer listened to his own life being divided in a luxury kitchen and decided for the first time not to save the people standing inside it, stay with me, because this story is not really about revenge. It's about what happens when the people closest to you stop treating your love as something sacred and start treating it like access. For most of his marriage, Noah Halden had been described in ways that sounded affectionate, until you listened long enough to hear the insult hiding underneath. Steady, easy, uncomplicated. A good man. The kind of husband a smart woman could build a life around. Serena used to say those things with real warmth. In the beginning, she meant them. Back then, before Vivian moved in temporarily after her second divorce, before Tessa began drifting through the house like a permanent guest with opinions about everyone's worth, Serena had loved Noah in a way that still felt private and unperformed. She liked the quiet way he listened, the fact that he never needed to dominate a room to feel secure inside it, the way he could take a broken thing apart, code, hardware, systems, even people sometimes, and understand how to make it work again without demanding applause for the repair. He made life feel less exhausting. That was her phrase. And Noah had believed for years that this was what mature love looked like. Not fireworks, not spectacle, just steadiness. The kind of marriage built from bills paid on time, late-night takeout, soft jokes in bed, and the comfort of being chosen every morning without needing to ask. But comfort changes shape when the wrong people begin living inside it. Vivian had never liked Noah in any honest way. She liked what he made possible. The mortgage paid on time, the house in the better part of the city, the uncomplaining reliability. The way he absorbed tension rather than generating it. To her, He was not a man her daughter had married. He was a structure her daughter had access to. Tessa was simpler. She found decency embarrassing. She liked louder men, richer men, sharper men, or at least men who looked expensive enough that she could imagine herself reflected in them. Noah, with his understated clothes, calm voice, and refusal to perform masculinity for insecure rooms, offended her idea of power. She mistook stillness for lack. That was the first thing people always got wrong about him. Noah was not passive. He was restrained. There's a difference. But restraint is easy to exploit when the people around you have grown used to spending your patience as if it belonged to them. At first, the disrespect arrived in forms small enough to survive explanation. Vivian commenting on who really understands the legal side of the world whenever Serena spoke and Noah stayed quiet. Tessa joking that Noah had the energy of a guy who'd apologize to a burglar for not having better silver. Dinner conversations where Noah paid, fixed the Wi-Fi, called the contractor, moved the money, reset the home system, then sat through jokes about how adorably low maintenance he was. Individually, none of it seemed catastrophic. That's how these things work. A marriage rarely collapses under one grand betrayal first. It thins out. One correction left unsaid, one indignity absorbed because the night is already too long, one little humiliation smoothed over in the name of peace, until peace becomes another word for imbalance. Serena told him more than once that her mother was difficult, that Tessa was immature, that family dynamics were messy, that he was reading too much into things. And because Noah loved her, really loved her, not lazily, not symbolically, but in the practical, daily way that makes a man keep showing up after his pride has already started bleeding, he kept choosing interpretation over accusation. He told himself she was under pressure, that the firm was changing her, that stress had made her smaller, not colder, that whatever was going wrong between them could still be repaired if he stayed patient enough, useful enough, safe enough. Useful. There was that word again. What Serena, Vivian, and Tessa never fully understood was how much of their life ran through Noah's invisible design. The deed to the house had been structured through his trust from the beginning, long before Vivian started referring to it as our place. The financial infrastructure beneath their lifestyle, the layered accounts, emergency buffers, permissions, fallback authorizations, all ran through systems. Noah had set up quietly, methodically, without ever imagining he might one day need them to protect himself from the people sleeping under his roof. He wasn't flashy, that was true. But people often confuse a man who does not advertise his leverage with a man who has none. That mistake would become very expensive. The next morning, Noah did something he should have done years earlier. He stopped explaining other people to himself. The old homeowner called at 8:12. Noah had barely slept. He had spent the night in the guest room, not because Serena had asked him to, but because the shape of the house had changed the moment he heard his own marriage being discussed like a paperwork problem. When the phone lit up, he almost ignored it. Then he saw the name, Martin Kessler, the man who had sold him the house. Martin sounded careful, too casual in tone, too deliberate in pacing. "I probably should have mentioned this before closing," he said. "There's an old internal camera system still tied to the terrace side archive. Thought it was dead, but my installer called. One of the dormant feeds spiked last night." Noah went still. The kitchen, the wine, the laughter. Serena's voice saying he was safe, but not enough. Martin offered the backup login. Noah took it, thanked him, hung up. 10 minutes later, he was in his office, the old security portal open on one screen and a fresh, encrypted archive running on the other. The footage loaded slowly at first. Black frames, timestamps, broken angles. Then the kitchen came alive in grainy high definition. There they were, Serena at the counter, Vivian at the island, Tessa laughing into her glass, and though Noah himself wasn't visible, the terrace microphone caught everything. Tuesday. The signature switch, the account movement, the word idiot, the word safe. Noah watched once, then twice, then a third time. Not because he needed proof anymore, but because the mind does something strange when it meets betrayal up close. It keeps returning to the wound, as if repetition might produce a kinder translation. It didn't. If anything, the second viewing made the truth colder. This wasn't improvisation. It wasn't wine talking. It wasn't one ugly family moment spiraling too far. They had a plan, and somewhere inside that plan, Serena had crossed the hardest line without ever raising her voice. She had stopped treating Noah as a person whose life required protection, and started treating him as a problem that needed to be removed elegantly. That morning she knocked once on his office door and stepped in wearing cream silk and a face still soft enough to resemble the woman he had once trusted. "You're up early," she said. Noah muted the feed before she could hear herself. "Couldn't sleep." She studied him for a beat too long. That was one of the first things he noticed once he stopped protecting her with interpretation. How often she looked at him now, not with intimacy, but with assessment. "You okay?" she asked. He almost laughed, not because it was funny, because bad faith, wrapped in concern, is one of the loneliest sounds in a marriage. "Fine," he said. She crossed the room, kissed the side of his head, and said, "We should talk tonight, about next steps." Next steps. Noah nodded. Of course. When she left, he didn't feel broken. He felt finished. By noon, he had watched enough to know he was not dealing with greed alone. Greed would have been easier. This was contempt mixed with dependence, which is one of the ugliest combinations a family can build inside a house. Vivian thought of him as financial infrastructure with a pulse. Tessa thought he was a joke with access to capital. But Serena was worse because she still knew him well enough to weaponize what was decent in him. She knew he avoided public scenes, knew he would rather preserve order than create spectacle, knew that if she cried at the right moment or used the word pressure in the right tone, he would instinctively shift into repair mode before he reached anger. That had been the shape of the marriage for too long. Noah fixing the atmosphere before he fixed himself. So he stopped hoping. He started preparing. First, he copied the camera archive into 3 encrypted locations. Then, he added something new. A low-profile audio relay into the kitchen pendant housing while the 3 women were out at lunch. A passive mirror on the home office printer queue. A permissions layer across the joint dashboards Serena had never bothered to learn existed, because Noah had built it years ago when he still believed redundancy was simply good financial hygiene, not self-defense. By late afternoon, he had already called 2 people. The first was a trusts and estates attorney. The second was a forensic accountant with exactly the kind of personality Noah preferred in moments like this: cold, fast, and professionally unimpressed by human drama. He did not tell either of them the story emotionally. He told them what mattered. Possible forgery, attempted asset transfer, misrepresentation around authority, possible abuse of access, potential professional misconduct if Serena intended to use her legal training to manufacture consent. The attorney asked only one question: "How much do you have documented?" Noah looked at the frozen image of his wife on the monitor, wine glass lifted, body angled toward a future she thought she was arranging without him. "Enough," he said. That evening, Serena came home with shopping bags and the careful brightness of a woman already rehearsing her posture for the life after this one. Tessa followed. Vivian brought flowers and put them in Noah's kitchen as if she were already staging the transfer. At dinner, Vivian talked about a friend's divorce settlement with that falsely casual tone older women use when they want to float strategy into a room without taking ownership of it. Tessa joked about how fast people reinvent themselves once dead weight is gone. Serena told Noah she had sent him a few things to review later. Noah smiled, poured wine, asked if anyone wanted more bread. That unsettled Serena more than anger would have, because anger she knew how to manage. Silence from a man she had always treated as emotionally predictable? That was new. After dinner, she texted him a link to interior plans for the next chapter. The message ended with a heart. Noah stared at it for a long moment. Then, he opened the shared documents folder she had referenced and found exactly what he expected. Draft transfer paperwork, signature placeholders, property reassignment language, account movement sequencing, a timeline labeled Tuesday switch. He read every line once. Then, he leaned back in the dark and let himself say the truth in full. She had already chosen this. And now, so had he. The family dinner was set for Tuesday. Vivian called it a reset meal. Tessa called it the clean handoff. Serena kept calling it practical, as if practical were a moral defense. By then, Noah had already revoked the relevant power of attorney pathways, redirected the vulnerable funds into protected holding structures, locked transfer authority behind a delayed verification stack, and prepared the eviction packet through counsel. He had not touched the house deed because he didn't need to. It was already his. Always had been. But he let them keep moving. That was important, because arrogant people reveal the full shape of themselves only when they believe the room is still safe. Tuesday arrived warm and bright. Serena spent the afternoon arranging candles. Vivian chose the wine. Tessa kept making little jokes about fresh starts. And Noah played his part. He even let Serena believe he was distracted by good news from work. "There may be a big compensation shift coming," he said lightly while helping set the table. Tessa's eyes sharpened. Vivian went still. Serena smiled too quickly. There it was. Not love, not relief, calculation. That was when the last small tenderness died. Dinner began beautifully. That's the thing about betrayal in well-furnished houses. It usually does. The plates were warm. The light was soft. Serena wore blue because she knew he once told her it made her look honest. Vivian performed maternal concern. Tessa performed impatience disguised as wit. Halfway through the meal, Serena reached into her leather folio and set a stack of papers beside Noah's plate. "Just routine restructuring," she said. "Timing, tax simplification, household authority updates. We should sign tonight while everything is in one place." Noah looked down at the papers, then up at her, then at Vivian, then at Tessa. The whole room held itself very still. He smiled and raised his glass. "To the real owner of this house," he said. They all froze. Tessa gave a nervous laugh first. Vivian frowned. Serena's face changed in a way no one knew he would remember for the rest of his life. Not shock yet, not fear, just the brief animal confusion of someone realizing the script has slipped half an inch out of their hands. Noah set down his glass. Then he slid a small flash drive onto the table. "What is that?" Serena asked. "The part where you stopped mistaking me for harmless," Noah said. He took out the printed documents next. Revocation notices, asset protection orders, eviction papers, a fraud complaint draft addressed to Serena's law firm, A council letter outlining attempted transfer misconduct and unauthorized financial manipulation. Tessa went pale first. Vivian started talking immediately, the way people do when they believe tone can still control facts. This is insane. Noah looked at her calmly. No, he said. It's documented. He turned to Serena. You called me safe, he said. You were right. I was safe. For you. For all of you. That's why this worked for so long. Then he tapped the flash drive. You called me a useful idiot. Turns out I was just patient. Serena didn't cry. That, somehow, made it sadder. She only stared at him and whispered, You recorded us? No, Noah said. You forgot the house was already listening. Silence hit the table like weather. Then he finished it. The accounts are frozen. The POA is revoked. You are no longer authorized on any protected transfer path. And you, Vivian, and Tessa will both be out of this house before sundown tomorrow. Tessa stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. Vivian started on legality, fairness, emotional abuse, distortion, family, everything people reach for when they have confused someone's decency with permanent access. Noah let her speak. Then he said the coldest and truest thing he had said in years. You didn't choose me because I was easy to love, he said. You chose me because you thought I'd carry your selfishness more gracefully than you could. No one at the table had anything left for that. By the next afternoon, Vivian and Tessa were gone. Serena's firm had opened an internal review. The house remained standing exactly where it always had, but the story inside it had changed completely. Noah did not feel triumphant. That would have made the ending too simple. What he felt instead was grief sharpened into clarity. Not only for the marriage, for the version of himself that had spent too long mistaking usefulness for intimacy, patience for safety, and private tenderness for public loyalty. Serena had not betrayed him only with greed. She had betrayed him with convenience. That was the deepest cut. Because people who hate you may still fear your pain, but people who grow comfortable with your devotion often stop seeing it at all. And maybe that is the real lesson in stories like this. Not that the quiet man finally won, but that silence is not always weakness. Sometimes it is simply the sound of a person who has run out of reasons to keep explaining why they deserved to be loved correctly. If this story stayed with you, leave a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what hurts more in the end? Open cruelty, or the quiet moment you realize the people closest to you had already decided you would be the easiest one to sacrifice? Some people don't betray you with hate. They betray you with convenience. I'll see you in the next story.